and rebuild so we get a good flow through the facility to increase our capacity to dissolve airflow tissue or thicken the sludge to get it into the storage tanks. Next slide. The other is dewatering capacity. Now, as we grow, we will need more capacity to dewater the sludge. Right now we're fine. So even though our engineers have said this is kind of a priority, we still look at it and say, no, we may not have to do that until we see growth. And I'll kind of get into that a little bit later. Next slide. This is our raw sewage pump station. So all the sewage from all 5 communities come into this central facility, and then we pump it up and flow by gravity through the plant. Next slide. And this is the old raw sewage pump. So back in 2003, we built a brand new raw sewage pump station. We didn't demolish the old one. So they listed both as needing upgrades. And from our standpoint, again, if we don't see the growth, we're only going to do one, not both. Next slide. The next is with our collection system, and you guys are very familiar with that collection system. When it rains, we get stray water into the sanitary sewer system. So when we see that large amount of flow coming up to the treatment plant, we have the ability to do primary treatment and then temporarily shoot it up to the Ralston Road lagoons. We store it there until plant flow comes down, and then we can bring that flow back and treat it and get it out. So this is kind of a big wide spot in the system process. And that's a 1970s pipeline and pump. And so that is in dire need of reconstruction. So what I say is we have a master plan. Our engineers have given us recommendations what to do the first 5 years. We now take that information, we watch the growth, and we work with the basis of growth, not years. So if your growth projections don't occur next year, we don't have that demand. So while we do it as engineers, we do it on a yearly basis. Actually, we watch population growth that is discharging the treatment plant to really trigger when things need to get done. So it's just kind of if you guys hit a huge growth spurt, yeah, we're gonna have to do some improvements. If you don't hit a growth spurt, we're not gonna have to do improvements. So it's our plan, but it's not cast in stone that any of this has to be done at this time. So that's why I just kind of want to present what we're looking at for the next 5 years at the treatment plant. Other than that, it's in pretty good shape operationally. Now,
is that it?
Well, there's one thing. You guys kind of look at me. Well, why are you telling me all this? Every 5 years, we also look at our rate structure. So this is kind of one of the pieces that we need to identify what rates we will need in the next 5 to 6 years. So we've got this piece done. We've got our costs, and so in the next couple months to within the next year, we're going to be coming back and saying, hey, I may need a little bit more money on a rate structure. And this kind of gives you guys an idea of what we're spending the money on, not frilly things. So with that, is there any questions?
Thanks, John. Is there anyone on the board that has any questions for Dr. O'Brien? Is there anybody in the audience? Yes, sir.
I have a question about this. Okay, we pay an extra money for our storage repairs that we've been doing over the last 5 or 6 years. Where's that money gonna go to? Because I don't see no activity around the sewage improvement. I seen a big flurry at the first year and a half, but now it kinda quieted down. Can you enlighten us about where we stand on the development of Fenton Township, or Lake Fenton Township, sewage? Where do we stand?
I can address, do you want to address it?
Well, you're referring to the sewer user fees, right, the
Yes.
$255 a quarter. Well, most of the improvements that increase was needed for have been done for a long time, but they were financed with bonds that are still being
Yes.
paid off. And so right now, we anticipate, we have 2 large bond issues that get paid off in 2024. So that's the year where we expect to make a significant reduction in the rate. If John doesn't raise the county rates too high.
No. And if I can add to that, is prior to your improvements, the treatment plant during a rain event would see 17 million gallons come down to the treatment plant. Since Fenton Township made their improvements, we haven't seen over 11. So you have significantly removed a lot of excess water from the collection system, and it did work.
That's
I
what
can
I
al-
wanted to know.
I can kind of speak to that too. As a trustee for over a decade, you really don't understand the complexity of the sewer system that we have. Fenton Township has 57 pump stations, I think going to 58 pump stations. I think that's second to Detroit. So we have a very sophisticated system because of all the lakes. So one of the most probably, I get that question asked more than almost any single question, is we pay a lot for sewer, but we also have a very sophisticated sewer system that is, we have companies that we deal with, Lawrence Engineering, that looks over that system, and it is an expensive system to keep up and running. There's constantly things that go wrong. Disposable wipes, for an example, that people use, they're not supposed to use, clog up the system, so we're having to do something for, to prevent that, or not prevent it, but to react to that. We have all that. So we do have a very complex sewer system, and it's maintained very well, but as Tom said, those bonds that were issued nearly 20 years ago are coming up, and we are seriously going to be looking at rate reductions in the future.
Because I was just asking, because I've been here 18 years in the township, and I seen a big flurry of it, of development. Then it quieted down, but I never knew. Okay, I noticed that the pumping stations have now generators. If you have a collar failure, the generators come on, which is very good. I see that all around, which is good. I just wondered where we stood on the bond issue, as far as that goes. Okay.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I did. I live right next to the plant, and I know a lot of people on Lobdell Road complain about the smell. And it seems like the people on that side of the township, it's kind of unfair because they get all the smell, and people up here on the other side of the township don't really have to deal with it. So I would, I wouldn't want to put anything like Cedar Creek in here that put more people and more smell and everything like that, because it's already smells there. A lot of people have complained. I talked to over a lot of people this week, and they all complain about the sewer smell on Lobdell Road. Is all I know of, and I might be wrong.
Speak to that? No.
No, I mean, we've got odor control system. Now, are you on not Lobdell
I'm on
South?
Hogan. I'm on
You're
Hogan.
Hogan, but you're
We have
south
the-
of Silver Lake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're on Hogan, and the main goes, we have a right of way that goes to our land.
Yeah. We're working with one of the local farmers to acquire some property to put in an odor control unit.
Okay.
I got one question.
There has been a lot of complaints, and
Yeah.
I think more people in that area would only add to that problem.
Is
Thank you.
this city of Fenton also tied into our system, or is that a different system altogether?
both cities, Fenton and Linden, are part of District 3. So all three communities flow to the same plant.
Okay.
John, you said, so this, $4,590,000 is the cost is gonna be for the next 5 years?
That is what our engineer is recommending for the next 5 years.
Next
We're,
five.
we've,
And that's gonna be divided up between all three municipalities?
yes, yeah. The county runs District 3, for lack of a better word, like a cooperative. I don't have a separate rate for Linden, I don't have a separate rate for the city. We set one single rate for each community. So basically what'll happen is we will look at that list, and as I said, we will look at the growth patterns and what we see, and even though our engineers may make a recommendation, we may take it one step further and say, no, I don't need to do both raw pumping stations, I only need to do one. The dewatering equipment, we don't see the growth yet, we can push that off to the next 5-year cycle.
You know how many paying units are in those three municipalities combined?
We have, I believe there's 17,000 REUs in the District 3 system. I believe you guys have 9,000.
John, I have a question. So the county itself is not setting aside any money, even though this is a system for the three municipalities. My question is, we have a lot of money that's coming down the pike from the federal government. Is Water and Waste setting aside any of that? This is exactly what that money's supposed to be used for, is capital, these type of improvements.
Yes, we are making the same approaches that appeal to the general county for the funding. Is even though we are Genesee County Water and Waste, we are an independent agency and not directly tied to the county. So the county created this agency, so the money that you're talking about went to the county proper, not to our office.
Correct, but you
But
can
we are,
request that money.
yeah, but we are pursuing that as well as the state and federal money is. There's several ways to go through it with applications or SRF, state revolving loan funds. But again, it's still borrowing the money. As you know, borrow the money, you do have to pay it back.
Well, there's state.
And there are grants. So yes, we are pursuing every opportunity we can for grants.
Well, is there anything the township can do to help you, rather than putting the burden on our taxpayers or our residents?
Yeah.
To help you with any type of, because I know there's state 50-50 matching funds, there's federal funds, there's all kind for these type of capital improvement projects. Is there anything we can do as a township that could help you to procure those funds to take the burden away from our taxpayers?
I think once the final rules come out, we do have a set of draft rules right now. Once the final rules come out, we will be making those applications, and we will be seeking support from the communities that we serve for those applications.
Well, let us know if there's anything I personally can do or the township can do to help you procure those funds. Any other questions?
Yeah, one other question, John. Looking at this system, so you're telling me that this is a complete system, independent satellite from the one up on Beecher and Montrose. None of our sewage goes up to those other facilities?
No, so the Montrose facility is District 1, 2, 5, and 6. This was established as District 3.
So this is complete isolated system for us.
This is isolated, yeah.
How clean is the water when it gets discharged? I don't know, you probably, for my own curiosity. How clean is it when it gets put back in the river, you know?
Fish swim in it more than they swim in the river.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah,
I'm not gonna be
it's,
that guy that says take a drink of it, I'm
Yeah,
just
no.
asking, I mean.
yeah,
you know.
and this is facility, we don't use chlorine for disinfection, we use ultraviolet, so we don't have any of that excess of chlorine going into the river. And it's on the Shiawassee Canoe Trail, so they haven't seemed to complain about it.
Okay, thank you.
So John, when we see fish jump, that means that they're in the river water, not the,
They're,
Plants water?
well, it depends. Are they jumping for fun or jumping to get out?
Any other questions?
So you mentioned that you're considering some odor reduction, possibly considering looking at buying land. Is that somewhere else in the next 15 years of the
No, that's a smaller
smaller scale?
scale. It's we've had it in the plans, but we're trying to acquire some land. But for some reason, the land out there is very expensive.
Thank you. John, again, thanks for the presentation. I appreciate it.
All right, and thank you for putting me on first. So.
Thank you.
All right.
Not a problem.
Bye.
All right, moving on. The next business in order is the meeting minutes. Included in the packet are the minutes from the June 21st regular meeting. Are there any corrections or requested revisions to these meeting minutes? Hearing none, the meeting minutes stand approved as presented. The next business in order is expenditures. Are there any questions from the board regarding any of the invoices? Hearing none, a motion is in order to approve the expenditures totaling $287,087.43 for payment.
I'll move the motion.
I'll support.
All right, the motion's been moved and seconded. Any further questions? Clerk Crew, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Reed,
Yes.
Gopel.
Yes.
Tucker's absent. Kessler,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Crew votes yes. Coptrick,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right. The next business in order is public hearings. We have none. Next is reports. We have Fire Chief Bolts attending tonight to give us a fire department second quarter report.
That's kind of cool. All right, second quarter for Fenton and Tyrone Township. We had 185 alarms. And that one's the old pie chart, which I've got the more defined sheet. So it says we've had fire other, 7 building fires, 1 cooking fire, 3 mobile property fires, medical assist 32, EMS calls 44, vehicles with vehicle accidents 6, motor vehicle accidents with no injuries 4, 2 extrication of victims from vehicles, water rescues 1, carbon monoxide incident 2, power lines down 4, arcing and shorted electrical equipment 1, smoke and odor removal 1, public service assistance 1, assist to the police 8, unauthorized burning 37, unauthorized burning 6, dispatch and canceled en route 37. No incident found on arrival, which is more or less being canceled, 5. Authorized control burning 1. Smoke detector activation 1. CO detector activation due to malfunction 1. Unintentional transmission of an alarm 2. Alarm system sounded, no fire, unintentional 3. And carbon monoxide detector activation with no CO2. And that actually is combined, that's all the Fenton Township and Tyrone Township in one. So out of those, 32 of them were in Tyrone Township. So we had a vehicle fire, 8 medical assists, 9 EMS calls, 2 vehicle accidents with injuries, 1 motor vehicle accident, no injuries, an extrication of a victim, arcing or shorted electrical equipment, smoke and odor removal, assist the police 1, dispatch and cancel en route 5, no incident found on arrival 1, and smoke detector activation due to malfunction 1. So compared to 2020, we're up about 45, 50 calls for the second quarter. So.
Thanks, Chief. Does the board have any questions for the Chief? Thanks, Chief.
Mm-hmm.
Our second report is an ordinance enforcement second quarter report. I'll go ahead and just read a letter from our ordinance enforcement officer, Patrick Shaw. He said the second quarter brought a variety of complaints, most popular being tall grass, zoning, blight, and junk vehicles. 3 tickets were issued for littering, the keeping of animals, cats, and junk vehicles. All 3 are within the court system at this time. All other complaints and violations have a priority for gaining compliance. Attached is a statistical report for your review. I'm sure all of you have had a chance to review that. Is there any questions from the board? All right, are there any committee reports to be made to the board this evening?
I'll throw out the election committee met and approved the workers for the August 3rd election this evening. So we're all set. We'll be utilizing a section of the or the gymnasium at the high school for the election.
Okay. Any other reports, committee reports? All right, moving on. The next business order is communications. We have none. The next business in order is adoption of ordinances. This is a proposed amendment to the cemeteries ordinance. This is the second reading and vote on adoption. Operations Manager Broker, will you review, please?
Yes, based on the discussions at the last meeting and also some information provided by Attorney Belzer, we modified the proposed amendment slightly. Under section 7A, instead of saying mother and infant, it says parent and infant. And then for D, rather than saying 2, we're saying up to 6 if it's just cremated remains within 1 plot. That isn't really a magic number. It's just we thought that would probably cover most requests. But according to Mr. Belzer, there is really no legal limit to what we can put in there other than what we can physically fit.
Thanks, Tom. Is there any questions from the board? All right, hearing none, I need a motion to amend the to cemeteries ordinance number 453 as presented.
So moved.
Support.
All right, motion's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Clerk Krug, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Cottrick,
Yes.
Kessler,
Yes.
Krug votes yes. Gopel.
Yes.
Tucker's absent. Lorraine,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thanks, Bob. All right, the next business in order is unfinished business. We have none. Moving on to new business. This is proposed engineering services agreement, Lawrence Engineering PC. Just to give you a little bit of history, after being elected and taking this job in November, I've had the pleasure of getting to work with, witness the benefits and experience that Lawrence Engineering are. Well, we've called them our township engineer, but hasn't really officially been penciled by contract. As I've spoken to, we have a very sophisticated sewer system. The township, again, has 57, going to go on 58 pump stations. Lawrence Engineering has been involved in the development of our system since 2003 and has been doing an amazing job managing the system for our residents. Though the township has referred to Lawrence as our township engineering firm, I thought it was in the best interest of our residents to solidify that relationship, their experience and their expertise with our sewer system, and put it into a contract. I know that the board's had time to review the contract. Are there any questions from the board? Questions? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve the engineering services agreement with Lawrence Engineering PC as presented.
So moved.
Support. Move's been moved and seconded. Any further questions? Hearing none?
Just, I'd say, I was thankful you had the opportunity to explain a little of this to me, and it definitely seems good to solidify it in a contract and get that rate locked in, so we don't have to worry about it, because it's been really impressive. Trustee Reed and I had the opportunity to go to the plant earlier this year, and obviously they have a lot of expertise that we really depend on. So thanks.
Anything else? All right. Hearing nothing, Clerk Krug, will you please call the roll?
Yes, sir, thank you. Gopel,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Cottrick,
Yes.
Krug votes yes. Reed,
Yes.
Kessler,
Yes.
motion passes.
I want to thank the board. I have been working for the last 7 months with Lawrence Engineering, with both Alan, Melissa, and Brian. They do an amazing job for the township. Their knowledge base it's amazing. You know, I get texts at 4 o'clock in the morning. They're up, they're doing things, and I think our residents should rest assured that we've chosen the best, most experienced engineering firm, and so, again, I'd like to thank the board. Next under new business is the proposed water franchise agreement, DMK Development and City of Linden. Again, I'll refer to Operations Manager or Broker. You can review, please.
Sure. You may recall that the developers of the senior living facility on Silver Lake Road have approached the city of Linden about getting municipal water rather than trying to rely on a private well system. And the city of Linden has agreed to extend water service and has provided a franchise agreement, which is a three-party agreement, the city, the township, and DMK. We're a necessary party, basically giving permission. We don't have any responsibilities or financial responsibilities with this. The version that was originally sent out was modified slightly today. The one you have in front of you is the modified one. We added a clause 12, basically just confirming that we have no liability for DMK's failure if they fail to comply with the agreement. Linden has already reviewed this and okayed it, so they're fine with it. I think the developers already signed it, so it's presented for board consideration.
Thanks, Tom. Are there any questions from the board? Sure you've all had time to review it. Hearing none, I need a motion to approve the franchise agreement between Fenton Township, the City of Linden, and DMK Development for the City of Linden to provide municipal water to DMK Development's senior living project as presented.
So moved.
Support.
All right, the motion's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Clerk Krug, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Kessler,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Krug votes no. Lorraine,
Yes.
Cottrell,
Yes.
Tucker's absent. Gopal,
No.
motion passes.
All right, next under new business is proposed hiring Fenton Township Fire Department. Chief Bolts, will you come up and update the board, please?
This is obviously something we haven't seen much of lately, and we take advantage of it when we get the applications in. Nicholas Harvey has submitted application for employment. Mr. Broker set up all of his screenings for his background check and his drug test, and he passed everything. It's good to have, he's a 2020 graduate of Fenton High School, and good to have some young blood on the fire department. So we're looking for your approval.
All right, are there any questions from the board? All right. I guess I have one. Chief, can you bring us up to date exactly how many, I know this, but can bring the residents and those people that are attending and the board, how many do we have in the fire department, and what would be the optimum number that you would like to see in the future?
Well, the optimum number would be between 25 and 30 would be a perfect number with 2 stations. It'd be easier to manage them, but it'd be also nice to have an extra 2 or 3 people on a call. We're sitting at about 18 right now with 3 on leave of absence. So this is gonna definitely, being non-trained, we have to train him yet, so he'll be going to the academy in October. So it's just good to get them in while they're young and have them hopefully stay around for a while.
And I'm sure you have a plan to get more hired?
Oh yeah, we're working with the Genesee County Chiefs and everybody. This is retention is nationwide. It's we're seeing it in our EMS, our fire, our police. Everyone's getting out of the public safety, and it's kind of not a good thing. So we're looking for people that want to do it. And if you want to do it, get on the website, get a application, and sign up.
Well, Chief,
So-
we're lucky to know that you're on top of it, and good luck.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve the hiring of Nicholas Harvey as a member of the Fenton Township Fire Department as presented.
I will move the motion.
Support.
Motion's been moved and second. Any further discussion? Clerk Crew, will you please call the roll?
Reed,
Yes.
Gopel.
Yes.
Tucker's absent. Kessler.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Krug votes yes. Patrick.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Next under new business is resolution number 2021-14, proposed street improvement special assessment district for Enid Boulevard. Operations manager, will you update the board?
Yes, property owners on Enid Boulevard have filed petitions to create a street improvement special assessment district to have their road repaved. This memo is now out of date. I got more petitions in today, so they now have 55.8% of the frontage represented on the petition. And there may still be a few more trickling in, but they've exceeded the over 50% requirement to move the process forward. So the next step in the process is to conduct a public hearing on the creation of the district, and so a resolution has been prepared to schedule that hearing.
All right. Any questions from the board? All right, resolution number 2021-14. Clerk Crew, will you please present the resolution?
Yes, thank you. It tentatively declares the township intent to repave Enid Boulevard, tentatively designates the special assessment district as the Enid Boulevard Improvement Special Assessment District, which includes all properties fronting Enid Boulevard, schedules a public hearing for August 2nd, 2021, here at the township board meeting, directs the clerk to publish and mail the hearing notices in accordance with the statute, and repeals any conflicting resolutions. I'll move the resolution.
We have a second?
I'll support.
All right, motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Clerk Crew, can you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Tucker's absent. Lorraine.
Yes.
Gopel.
Yes.
Kessler.
Yes.
Reed.
Yes.
Kotrick.
Yes.
Krug votes yes. Resolution passes.
All right. Next under new business is the Michigan Township Association Principles of Governance. I'm sure you've reviewed the information in your packet, but Tom, can you just give a brief explanation?
Well, the principles of governance is something that the Michigan Township Association, they're asking township boards to adopt them as their principles. We find that basically affirming the MTA's mission and value statements, that the township government embodies efficient, effective, economical, ethical, and accountable local government. So it's just the principles of governance embody these core values and can guide board members toward consistent actions and deeds that reflect all in the township. So it's, they've asked for formal approval, and then they suggest to have everyone sign the original form, and we post it in the office. They're not asking for anything back, they're just kind of throw it in our lap to take the action.
Didn't we do something like this a few years ago? Or maybe it's quite a few years ago.
It's possible.
Okay.
Any questions from the board?
I thought they seemed like common sense
Yeah.
elements and guidelines that any elected official should abide by, so I have no problem adopting it and signing.
All right, so I need a motion to accept the principles of governance for the Michigan Township Association as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Support.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Clerk Crew, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Lorraine.
Yes.
Reed.
Yes.
Kotrick.
Yes.
Krug votes yes. Kessler.
Yes.
Gopel.
Yes.
Tucker is absent. Motion passes.
All right. Moving on, the next business order is board comment. Is there anyone on the board who has additional comments or concerns? I do have one. Not sure if all of you know that our township manager, Tom Broker, has been with the township exactly 27 years today. He starts his 28th year tomorrow. So, Tom, congratulations, and thank you for all of your hard work that you've given this township for 27 years.
Time flies.
So that's where the gray hair comes from. Okay.
Yeah, I was blonde when I started.
Yeah, I know.
And he does a wonderful job.
He sure does.
It is.
Absolutely.
All right, next business order is board comment. Is there anyone on the board has additional I guess I'll move on to something else. The next business order is public comment on agenda or non-agenda items. We will now open up the meeting for public comment on agenda or non-agenda items. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on agenda or non-agenda items?
Non-agenda.
Yes, sir. Would you like to go up to the microphone, if you would, please? State your name. And you can-
Forgive me, I got a bad leg.
Oh.
Can you state your name and address for, like, you don't have to give your address, just state your name for the record.
Yeah, Steve Gronziak. We've been in the neighborhood complaining about the trash people. I had my yard trash out for almost a couple of weeks before they came and picked it up. The storm, well, I had a lot of other stuff. But I go down Torrey Road and I see all this yard waste all over the place. Bags ripped open and that. What are we gonna do about it? These people are not holding up to their contract. And I hear the lame story, well, we can't hire anybody. Well, I call poor management on their part. You can manage the crisis. My history is I managed crisis before I retired. You look at the situation, you manage it, and you take care of it. These people don't know what the heck they're doing, tell you the truth. It's hit and miss. I came over here and I seen bags already ripped open because of the rain and that. They're just laying alongside the road as a mess. What are we gonna do about it, sir?
Thank you, Steve. Tom, you want to address some of that? And I can also.
We're in contact with Republic on a daily basis. I believe they were out today catching up what they didn't get done Friday. They believe this is gonna be a normal week for the first time all year. You know, we've heard that more than once. We'll believe it when we see it, but I believe they've got their staffing problem a little more under control at this point. So, once they're done, once they are up to date and it's no longer an issue, then we'll be having discussions on negotiating a credit that we can pass on in the form of a lower assessment for next year.
Okay. Because when I went down Torrey Road this morning, probably about 10 o'clock, I seen all kinds of bags laying alongside the road all the way up to the Fenton city limits. This afternoon when I went, I noticed that 90% of them were picked up. I said, oh, gee, because I did make a phone call this morning and says, hey people, what's gonna happen? It looks ugly. You know, and maybe that's what they did, you know, that they went down Torrey Road and, are we responsible for Torrey Road or is that a responsible of the county?
You talking about the road itself?
Yes.
Well, it's a county primary road, so any improvements done to the road, the road commission is financially responsible. You know, they did the asphalt resurface, which people will probably be disappointed to find out that's the first step in a chip and seal process. That's going to be what will be done there later this summer.
Because the job that they did, if they were working for me, I would have fired them.
Well, you gotta remember, they just put down ½ an inch of asphalt as a base for chip and seal. It's not intended to be a repaving.
Oh, okay. Because there's open gaps where they missed to put the asphalt, and when winter comes, the water will get just run underneath that and pop it.
Yeah, no, that asphalt is not intended to be a resurface. It's a base for the chip and seal.
Okay, that's all right, thank you, sir.
Is there anything else? Steve, I agree with you as a business owner.
I work.
Your job is to solve problems, but I can tell you, it's not just with Republic. It's not just a local problem, it's not a state problem, it's a federal problem, or a countrywide problem. Sharon and I went to a restaurant on Saturday morning. They had 2 waitresses there, and the owner says, the owner was cooking, his cook didn't show. So I think that you'll find restaurants throughout the township are closing at 8 o'clock. Restaurants that would be open till 11 or 12, or 2 o'clock in the morning. They can't get help to even stay past 8. I'm not making excuses for Republic, please.
True.
Understand that, Steve.
Oh, I understand that.
I understand that, but it is tough. And
Oh, yeah.
I think they're working very hard. Tom and I had him into our office and actually sat down with him and, I think I come in 3 days a week and ask Tom, and he's talked to him, or at least left messages for him, all 3 days, every week. So it is something that we are on top of, but it has been tough for them, and I'm not making excuses.
It's been tough for everybody, really.
It is. So hopefully we'll be able to get out of this sooner than later. But we are on top of it as a township. Tom is making those calls, if not every other day, every day, reaching out to our representative and trying to solve the problem, so.
Okay, thank you.
Very welcome. Thanks, Steve. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on agenda or non-agenda items? Yes? Would you like? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't like to say just saw this strange face walk in. I'm Sergeant Demeter Reeves from the Genesee County Sheriff's Office. I'm actually filling in today for Sergeant Snyder. It's his 40th birthday today, so he wanted to be with his family, so they asked me to stand in. I see a few faces. I see Jack, and I think that's our retired Sergeant Gopal.
Yep, you're right.
So I was
Nice
just
to
filling
see
in
ya.
for Andy today, and I wanted to introduce myself because I know I'm familiar to a lot of people.
Well, thank you very much. I should have called you out because I did get a text from him and
Yeah.
said he wasn't gonna come in. He was gonna play hooky, so.
You're always welcome.
Thank you for coming. Pam? Yes, please. Would you go up to the microphone, please?
Hi, my name's Pamela Handley. I live on Margaret Drive. I was referred to come talk to you by Mike Beam, the ordinance officer for the township. I'm here to talk to you about the landscaping along my shoreline as it relates to the 30-inch sightline ordinance. To provide a little bit of context very quickly, the property where we live was always very wet and swampy halfway up to our home. All the houses in the area are up on a hill, and there's about 150 feet to the lake shore. We reached out to Shoemaker's Landscaping early on when we moved in to help us provide some livable space. They came up with a plan for some landscaping with a patio and fire pit down by the shoreline. I was trying to look at receipts to see exactly when it was done. The proposal came into us in 2004, maybe it was done in 2005 or 6. It includes ornamental grasses, hydrangeas, and flowering plants. We continued to have quite a bit of water down there, and probably 12 years ago we planted a river birch based on a landscaper's recommendation because they soak up a lot of water. We're just trying to problem solve and make it better. It hasn't helped a whole lot. At the time I went to the contacted the township to make sure it was okay to plant a tree, and was told a single tree is legal within the ordinances for the township. Last summer, so all of those plantings have been there for 16 years. Last summer we received a complaint about our birch tree from a neighbor. At the time Mr. Beam came out, he told the neighbor that we were legal with the tree, but then happened to see that we have ornamental grasses and a hydrangea bush that exceeds the 30-inch sight line, and then came to us with that. So we trimmed them down to meet the requirements. The ornamental grasses, if you know, they grow every year and you trim them, we trim them every spring to 6 to 10 inches, so they're really low. The hydrangeas, we trim back severely so that they flower, but they grow during the summer. So again, last week I got a complaint and notification from Mr. Beam about a complaint about our ornamental grasses again. And at that point, I really started to wonder about whether the ordinance is appropriate for our setting or for within the township, and wanted to talk to someone about it. Mr. Beam referred me to you. So a couple things. It's been there 16 years. It was just last year, the first time that attention was brought to it because the ordinance officer happened to be there for another complaint. Now that my neighbor's aware of it, he's gonna poke every year, I suppose. We live up on a hill. The vantage point from my neighbor's deck is probably 20 feet above the water line. So a perspective 150 feet down the shoreline for a shrub, right now they're 48 inches. I went and measured them. Only blocks the view of the beach area for a short period of time. The original, or the ordinance that's present now was amended in 2007. So we did our planting before the ordinance was written. I wonder if it should be grandfathered. The last thing is there are a number of pontoon covers, boat covers, and Quonset huts that have popped up in the last 5 to 10 years. They range in height from, 6 to 8 feet and can be 30 feet long. From my vantage point, I'm looking at a whole slew of them. The landscaping that's in front of those Quonset huts is dwarfed compared to the Quonset huts block of view too. So my intent is that I think the landscaping provides beauty and enhances the lakefront. There are hundreds of other landscapes, plantings down by the lake in the last 20 years that's becoming more of the norm. I wonder if the ordinance perhaps could be amended or revised in some way to address the current lifestyle practices that people have relative to the boat covers and the current landscaping practices of people. Ornamental grasses are used extensively. I just took a boat ride over the weekend up and down Margaret Drive, and there's 27 other people that have them, yet because I live by a disgruntled neighbor, I feel like I've been fingered out, where if the intent of the ordinance is to protect sight lines of lakefront property owners, then it must not matter enough to you to enforce it, because it's been allowed all over, unless somebody brings it to your attention specifically. So you must not, I think if you want it to be an issue, then I would ask that you amend it to the appropriate extent. Thank you.
Pam, thank you very much. Mike and I did have a conversation about this afternoon, and I did ask him to come personally to address it. So Mike, would you mind coming
Hi,
up
Mike.
and addressing some of your concerns?
Well, I did, but I don't remember. Hi.
All right, well, I'll start with the last thought first, right, about how we enforce ordinances. There's really two methods that you can take when enforcing ordinances, right? You take a systematic approach or you take a complaint-based approach. And you can't just apply both approaches to all ordinances, right? When you look at a systematic approach, you take that for like your building codes, right? Because we know when X happens, we need to do an inspection, right? So there's a trigger that happens with that. For all other ordinances, police ordinances, the zoning ordinance, it is complaint-based. Complaint doesn't necessarily mean that the complaint's coming from a neighbor or a resident. Could be from staff. But there is something that triggers it. Without that complaint, we don't know that a violation is happening. And specifically when we talk about the sightline and how that is enforced, we would have to have access basically to everyone's lakeside yard in order to enforce that on every single lot. One, we don't have the authority just to walk onto someone's property without reason. Two, even when we do go on properties, right, for a sightline issue, we may see something that's a couple houses down, but it is usually far enough away that we can't, there's not an obvious health and safety issue. So if there's no complaint about it, we don't investigate farther. So this is part of the zoning ordinance, right? And what methods do we have for enforcing the zoning ordinance? Well, again, right, we get a complaint, so what happens? We talk to the residents. They have the ability to apply for a variance. You go in front of the zoning board of appeals, they go out to the site and they do their due diligence as part of it. But one of the aspects of a variance is, what's unique about this property, right? So it's very difficult for a sightline variance for plantings, right? Because what's unique about this property that's not unique for other properties? And so my recommendation was for Pamela to come here in front of the zoning, or in front of the township board, because you have the ability to authorize the planning commission to look at the zoning ordinance. You also can, accept the complaint that you heard here tonight and keep an eye on the situation so that if we receive more complaints, maybe then a threshold is hit where the planning commission should review it. I've been here for about 3 years, and from a zoning board perspective, it's very rarely that we see a variance request for plantings, right? Typically it's for a deck, it's for a house in the sight line, depending on where they're aligned. But I can tell you that, we enforce the ordinance to our ability. We enforce it consistently how other communities enforce their ordinances. And, for this type of complaint, for this type of issue, it's really complaint basis. We just don't have the mechanism to do an inspection of everyone's property. If we had like a rental ordinance and this were a rental property, then you're on site and that can be part of an inspection. But just for a regular homeowner, it's just really, there's really no mechanism other than complaint based to handle that. So I think what it's public comment, right? So no action, but what the township board may want to consider is either, accepting the complaint and waiting to see if we have more complaints, keep an eye on the situation, or you have the ability to forward it to the planning commission and have them, look at the zoning ordinance.
Do you have a recommendation?
I would say at this time that we do not get enough complaints about the way how we enforce the zoning ordinance for sightline relating to landscaping to warrant opening up the ordinance. At some point, it may be reasonable to open up the ordinance for standards for the sightline, for decks, to treat them as a waiver as opposed to a variance. But I think the zoning board and that mechanism operates smoothly and consistently. But, for plantings, we just don't have a large number of people complaining about the ordinance relating to that as being out of line for, how we enforce the sightline. We don't get variance requests for that. So I guess my recommendation would be, let's monitor it, see if we have other people with similar complaints, and if we do, then it would probably be a good idea to review the ordinance.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. Is there anybody that would like to speak to this? All right, is there any board?
Comment to his comment?
Excuse me?
May I comment?
Absolutely, Pam, go ahead. Yes, please.
So I get that you don't have many instances because nobody's bringing it to your attention, yet you all know it exists. And so the issue I have is that I happen to be one of those unfortunate individuals that lives by a grumpy neighbor. And it seems like it's selectively being enforced based on complaints, knowing that it exists, but you don't have the means to evaluate whether others are violating or following the ordinance, or you don't have maybe the manpower or a mechanism to do it. But I would imagine that all of you have seen plantings down by the shoreline and are aware of their existence. And even saying you see it far, 3 doors down, it's not a health and safety concern. Neither's mine. But then you were aware of it. But yet, because you didn't have a complaint, you didn't do anything. And so it doesn't seem equitable to me. In the short term, perhaps the vantage point and being grandfathered in may be a way to solve my issue.
Thanks, Pam. And I do understand. Is there, go ahead, Mike.
So on the grandfathered issue, I agree the ordinance was amended in 2007, but I believe that the standards for 30 inches were already in place by that time, and that a different part of that section was amended. So in my opinion, it would not be a legal non-conforming situation because the ordinance, the 30-inch portion of the ordinance is already in effect.
Prior to 2007,
Correct.
right? Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, we talked about that today. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Is there any questions from the board?
Just a comment, Mr. Supervisor. I happened to stop by because I was concerned about this. And what I really learned at their house is 2 things, and it's gonna sound opposite, but yes, they are violating the ordinance as written. But if you look at the mitigating, in my mind, circumstances where the homes on that section of Margaret Drive are probably at a 40 to 50 foot elevation, so if you're out on your deck, you can see. I did recommend to them, and it was all in my personal opinion, is there were some branches hanging down on the white birch, I think that's what it is, and they said, well, if that's an issue, we can trim it up where at the elevation. So I gotta think it would be best for the township, as Mike said, to monitor, but also look at, are there mitigating circumstances? It'd definitely be bad if it was all on the same level, but because of the elevation of the homes. One thing I ran in today, and I'm not complaining, but that area is always wet in the lawns because that's the way God made it.
Yeah.
Well, one of the neighbors has put in 3 levels of sod, so his yard is crested and all the water runs off on his neighbors. So, I mean, I would hope that when we get a complaint, we go out and try to look for mitigating issues and then go forward as amended, because I don't think we can amend that ordinance for every little thing that comes up. But that's.
And I agree, and in my conversation with Mike, I don't know how to solve that problem, Pam, because I've lived on the lake for nearly 4 decades, and you're right. There's gazebos, there's just all kinds of things that are all around this lake. How long they've been there, I guess, we could look at Google Earth as long as it's been around and try to establish it. But like Mike said, it's hard because and I've sat here and racked my brain to come up with an analogy that we could all, that would work, and I really can't, but it's like the
I got
sheriff,
one. I got one.
but the sheriff's sitting there on, she knows, let's say, on an average Sunday or Saturday, everybody coming back from up north is doing 90 miles an hour, right? It's there. But the one person, when she's sitting there on Thompson Road and gets radared, she's the one who pays the price for the other 700 speeders. And probably that's not a great analogy, but I really don't, I understand Mike's point. Unless we have a complaint, where does it start? We certainly couldn't change the ordinance, because we could say it's 48 inches. And in some areas, 48 inches is gonna be too high. Some areas, 7 feet wouldn't be too high. On some of those houses on Margaret Drive, I could see a 10-foot tree wouldn't bother my view at all. Seagrass in front of my house is 6 foot tall. Uh-oh.
Yeah, but you're not in the sight line.
Yeah, I am. My neighbors, everybody's looking down at the,
Okay.
so, but the point is I, and again, forgive me if it's a bad analogy, but, I will certainly stay on top of it with Mike, and if there is a solution to the problem, the zoning board, feels that there's a solution to the problem, we would be glad to look at it. And I feel sorry that you have a neighbor that is singling you out, but I had a hard time all day today, because like Bob, I feel for you. I mean, I don't see 40 inches on foliage on a lakeside when the house is up so high. I mean, he probably can still see his seawall, or they can see their seawall. But again,
It doesn't block any of their yard.
right, so again, I think that maybe what Bob said is we're gonna have to, Mike, maybe what we'll do is we'll talk about it, and maybe, we're just gonna have to look at each situation and say, does it justify that ordinance? And again, that's not a question for me to answer, that's our zoning administrator, so.
Well, so I think I have two thoughts, right? The first is you always have the ability to apply for a variance, right? You go in front of the zoning board of appeals, they'll come out, they'll look at the situation and make a determination whether or not it is, a hindrance to the line of sight. So that's my first thought. My second thought is a more philosophical thought, right? Because when we go in front of the zoning board, right, we're typically going to grant a variance. And when you grant a variance, there's 5 findings of fact. I do not believe that plantings would meet that threshold of complying with those 5 findings of fact, that it's not self-created, that this can't be applied to other, areas in the township, that the ordinance, that we wouldn't be better off as opposed to approving it, changing the ordinance. But maybe the solution is somewhere in the middle, where as opposed, I think I've mentioned this to you, Vince, before you got on, before you were a supervisor, we call these variances for the sight line, when in reality they're really waivers. And, if we change the criteria for what requires a sightline waiver, it still goes through the same process. But, we might be able to develop some criteria that are more favorable in relationship to sight lines than a variance as a whole.
Okay.
And I think Jack's probably got a comment or two on that.
Hold on
thought.
just one second, Jake. Mr. Gopal, would you like to?
No, I'm all set.
Trustee Gopal, okay, go ahead, Jake.
Well, what Mike is saying, and Mr. Tucker and Kate here, well, basic principle and laws, you have as many rights up until the rights of the next person. So, and that's a perfect analogy here, because the next person is whoever owns that other property. And this waiver concept, a variance is a permission to break the law. Call it whatever you want, but when you go to the ZBA, you're asking for permission to break the law of the township. And, Fenton Township has always been, and I noticed that because I've been in lots of townships, for townships, against townships, And Fenton Township is by far and away the most congenial, nice board and community ever. I mean, they try to do everything to make everybody happy. But from a lawyer standpoint, I think that you're not in a good position to try to resolve this issue. I mean, I feel sorry for you, you know, having this problem with the neighbor, but you have to have some very specific parameters in order to enforce it. And if you start like waivers or feeling sorry for somebody, and I don't, you know, lawyers, everybody gets mad at us, but if you start doing that, you have no real parameters to follow. It's like, you know, Montana has a speed limit, like don't go too fast. Well, guess how well that would work out here on the expressway. You have to have specific numbers, so you know what the requirements are. And if you start altering this, you just have to remember that when you really, literally, everybody's rights go up to the next person's rights, and at this point, it's the property line. So if you're gonna alter these things, you're gonna have a very hard time enforcing them. What you do is set yourself up for the ordinance then to be attacked. This ordinance was just attacked. We went through circuit court and the Court of Appeals, and we're in the process of having a guy move a bunch of trees. You know, like, I don't have any thoughts other than you have to make sure that whatever you have is fair all the way around. And if you happen to live next door to somebody that's not very nice to you, take them candy at Christmas or something. I don't know, but yeah, you know, it's just real hard, if not impossible, to come up with a good solution for this problem that's not going to create havoc throughout the township and all the lake, not just Lake Fenton, but all the properties on the water. That's my legal observation.
One thing I thought of, Mr. Supervisor, to help the residents, and here we go, like you said, Jack, is that if you're going to have something that could potentially be a sightline issue, and you have a contractor, regardless of who it is, they pull a permit, doesn't cost them anything, but pull a permit, and they're responsible if it violates the sightline issue. You know, if they know you can't be above 30 inches, why sell somebody 7-foot grass?
It's not that big when they put it in though.
Well, but they know, you know, if I plant a bush, I expect to get so high. If I plant a tree, I don't know, I'm just groping in the dark, but I just
We have a case
think.
like that in court too, where some guy is saying that it's not me, it was the contractor.
Yes.
And I shouldn't be in court, you know, like,
Oh,
it should be
okay,
the
well,
contractor.
I hope nobody goes to court over these, but
Well, and vegetation can be trimmed. You know, I mean, I think that's what it's gonna come back to, is it can be trimmed. And I feel for you as well, but having sat on the ZBA for many years, and I've actually been on the board of a homeowners association, and believe me, a lot of this goes on, but it was always the same premise. I mean, when I sat on that board of a homeowners association, we were not gonna be the neighborhood police. If a neighbor brought a complaint that there was some violation, whether it be a dog or a fence or what have you, you know, we would go out and investigate, but we were not gonna become the neighborhood police. And I don't think that this board can become the township police and, you know, the township, you know, ordinance snitchers. And the township certainly doesn't have, you know, nor do we want, probably as residents wanna spend our tax dollars on hiring people to do that. But I do feel for you, it's tough. And we've seen a lot of neighborly squabbles.
So would a variance be appropriate, a request for a variance?
But you have the ability to apply for a variance. That is your right. You know, as we were talking, I don't know what the likelihood of it being approved is.
I think you need to speak to that so she understands when she leaves, because again, there are criteria that have to be met, and I sat on the ZBA for, I think, 5 years.
It would be a tough hurdle.
It would be a real tough hurdle, because of the fact, if I was probably sitting there, I would say, you need to trim your vegetation. I mean, it's simple. It is a sightline issue. I'm not saying that's how they're gonna rule. I'm just saying, you know, I'm trying to, Mike, also, isn't there, what would her cost be associated with that?
It's $200 to apply. You know, it's win, lose, or
You'd
draw.
have to weigh that also.
So for a variance, there's 5 findings of fact. All right. The standard for which a variance is being granted would unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property from a permitted purpose or would render conformity unnecessarily burdensome. Right. That has a potential. The variance is the minimum necessary to provide adequate relief to the applicant. It is not so large that it is unfair to a similarly situated property owners who manage to comply with the requirements or make do with a smaller variance. So what this is saying is that, you know, by granting you the variance, we're not saying it wouldn't necessarily be applicable to another neighbor, you know, wanting it at the same height, right? And that, you know, if they're able to comply with the ordinance, why are you unable to? And you'd have to be able to, you know, convince the zoning board that that's, you know, about why your request is unique. The next is the problem is due to circumstances unique to the property and not to general conditions in the area. So again, right, we look at, you know, you're a lake lot property. What is unique about your property that can't be applied to other properties in the township that would necessitate, you know, the granting of the variance? And the next is that the problem is not self-created. You know, the thought process would be, you know, these are plantings that you've planted, so in essence, it's self-created. And then the last one is the issue with the variance would still ensure the spirit of the ordinance is observed, public safety secured, and substantial justice done. So those are the criteria you have to meet for a variance to be granted. And, you know, the key is that there's something unique about your property that couldn't be applied to other properties in the township. And I think that's where it's going to fail. I don't know what's unique. So, and that may be the justification. And that's why I don't know which direction they would go. You know, a lot of it would come down to, you know, how well you're able to articulate, you know, what's special about your site. I know all the zoning board members go out and visit the site. They are an excellent zoning board. They do their due diligence. But I don't know what the likelihood of it being approved is, right? It's definitely not a slam dunk, I can tell you that.
What are your thoughts?
So,
I think-
let me.
Yeah,
let
be
me-
short, Jack. We gotta move on.
Yeah, that
We
should
gotta
not,
move on.
the board should not be answering questions about
Alright.
what their thoughts about the ZBA are. That's way inappropriate.
So I have
Yeah, no,
your,
you don't know, but
Pamela, I have your email. I'll send you the application tomorrow. If you can, sure. Yep.
Pam, again, sorry, but I hope the board's been able to at least address your issue, and Mike knows, and we've had a conversation, so I'll make sure that he will follow up with you tomorrow, and you guys can go from there.
Put in my note right now.
All right.
Mine's real quick.
Okay, Chief, I'm
Tomorrow,
sorry.
the Laring Road overpass will be closed
Closed.
How long?
until
30th.
August,
June
maybe the first or
30th.
second week in August, is what the email I got
June
today
30th
was.
is what they had on the media.
Yeah, they
release.
say early August.
June 30th, it's already
July
July.
30th.
I was gonna say, whoa.
July 30th.
So
I knew what he was talking
it says
about.
early August, so we'll keep an eye on it, but there will be no passable traffic on it, so.
I have a question about that. Is it open for traffic?
I'm not for sure. I think they're tearing the expansion joints out, so you'd have to be able to jump.
Well, I
a
doubt
ways.
it. They're not
I
gonna
don't-
let you walk through a construction zone.
Yeah, it's gonna be all barricaded off. Well, the ones that did on Owen Road were 6 feet wide.
Yeah.
It's like a typical bike route for us. Walk over it.
Yeah, I would say no. Yeah. So, just,
Thanks, Chief.
got to get it right.
All right, thanks, Chief. All right, we're gonna move on. I can see that there's nobody attending via Zoom that would like to address the. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry.
First of all, I'd say thanks a lot for the board for their service to the community. I appreciate it, and I'm sure a lot of other people would appreciate it too. I just want to say some more things about Cedar Creek, or Cider Creek, just before we can think about it till the next meeting. I'd like to say that density is a real problem, and density, because it says in your in the master plan here about future land use, and it's got that land marked as low density. So I don't know how a big subdivision would fit into a low density. This doesn't seem to make sense there. And you see here on your master plan, it says existing land. There's very little vacant land left, only like 11%. I think it'd be good for the township to start saving and protecting land instead of trying to put more subdivisions in. And it says in the master plan on this sheet, on 117, that, and I read it, it's over 10 times in the master plan to keep the rural character. And a lot of people voted on keeping the rural character, and it's very important, and it's in the master plan very many times. And the other thing is, if you destroy all your agricultural land, it's very hard to get it back. I mean, once it's gone forever. And then I was counted the number of subdivisions from Owen Road, like by the corner bar, they're putting in that whole new senior living there. It's over 500 units or more in there. And there's a lot of subdivisions going down there. I don't think we really need another one. And then the number one thing in the master plan that everybody voted against, it's right here in the master plan on 135, it says traffic is the main issue for them. It's in the master plan, traffic. Then I was thinking, and I was talking to the chief, they said it's in the master plan also. It's very important, it says law enforcement, and we don't have a lot of law enforcement, and it's hard to get officers. And that being an affordable income place, there might be a lot of crime there. That's, I'm thinking that. And then although in the master plan it says providing high quality of life for open and green spaces, and I think putting a big subdivision in that area, it is not, providing open, green spots. And then that's about it. I'm just saying, and then it says here in the master plan that our county is 82 out of 83 of being the healthiest county. And I don't think of putting another 500 people in there with 500 cars is going to make us a healthier county with that. And I was thinking, just stuff like that. I think it's time to protect land, not build more. I know everybody's in the big building boom, and the builders want to boom, go, go, go. But I think it's time for us to protect, and and have our land for the future, for the to be a unique township, not a urban sprawl township. I think we have a real opportunity to become, like down there by the French Laundry. That's just nailed spot on. That's so beautiful and everything. And if we could have a contrast between that and bike trails and open spaces or places to go hunting and fishing and stuff like this, hunting and walking areas, and I just think it'd be better for our interest as a township to protect land and for the future, because we might need it, to grow crops, to have people walk around. But if we build it all up like Owen Road already is, and the traffic, I just think it's a very good idea for the township to think about preserving land for the future, not building an urban sprawl craziness. Have some parks and for people can recreation on. I don't know what to talk about that much, but I appreciate everything you do, and thanks for letting me talk.
I appreciate it. Can you do me a favor, just for the record, can you give your name, please?
Oh, Chris Ward is my name.
know,
I live on
Chris,
Hogan Road.
just wanted to make
Chris
sure we
Ward,
had you
and,
for the record.
I look forward to being at another meeting. Just some things to think about until we get to the next meeting, and I plan on going to the Planning Commission on the 8th and working on that too. So thanks for everything. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I apologize.
No worries.
Is there anyone else? And looking out, Tom, there is nobody out there. Is there, besides Hannah? All right. So, moving on, right now, we don't need to have you do that. Any other public comment? All right. If there is nobody else would like to address the board, I am now requesting we move into closed session. I need a motion to recess the the open meeting for the purpose of convening a closed session to review the proposed collective bargaining agreement with the Fenton Township Employees Union.
So moved.
Support. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Clerk Krug, will you call the roll?
Yes. Kessler.
Yes.
Reed.
Yes.
Krug votes yes. Gopel.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Lawrence. Lorraine.
Yes.
Bad writing. Tucker is absent. Motion passes.
Thanks, Bob. All right, to those of you attending via Zoom, we will not resume the meeting via Zoom after the closed session. We will be opening up.
That's why you're in closed session.
All right. Just for the record, we've made no decisions during the closed session. Okay, so to continue new business, we have reconvened. The proposed collective bargaining agreement, Fenton Township Employees Union. I need a motion to approve the 21 through 2025 collective bargaining agreement between the Charter Township of Fenton and the Charter Township of Fenton Employees Union, Local 1918.30, affiliated with the Michigan Council Number 25, ASME, AFL-CIO, as presented.
So moved.
Support.
All right, the motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Clerk Krug, will you call the roll, please?
Lorraine.
Yes.
Notice I got that.
I got it right.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kessler.
Yes.
Gopel.
Yes.
Tucker's absent. Krug votes yes. Reed.
Yes.
Motion passes. I thank everyone again for a great night here at the Fenton Township Board meeting. It is now 9:16 p.m. If there's nothing else, I say good night, and the meeting is adjourned.
It's Tuesday, Robbie.
Tuesday.